Delius and Mikari continued to talk throughout a large portion of the remainder of Delius's day, and they seemed to enjoy each other's company, even in the short sporadic conversations that they had, as eventually it was his partner, Jirara, come to join him in his conversation, hearing much about this talking orb in the village. After she had completed her tasks, joining Delius in her conversation. And together they talked with Mikara for quite a while. However, over the time that passed and the conversation that continued, the changes in Mikara began to become ever the more clear, as within the time span of a day, as the conversations continued and Mikara, like Delius and Jirara, sharing stories of their life, Mikara, on the other hand, had simply much more life to share. Every time that she awoke from her slumber, beginning to speak again, they could hear the years in her voice and in the stories that she told of her wedding, her life with her new beloved husband, the new home that they settled into, the children that they had, and how quickly they were growing. With every conversation, it became more and more apparent that the time differential between Mikara and them was simply vast. By near the end of the day, when the sun was beginning to hang low in the sky, Mikara was a well-withered woman with an entire life behind her, nearly 127, with children and grandchildren. And finally, Delius received the news that this transmission would be Mikara's last, as she would be retiring very soon and would not be around to continue transmission afterwards, having spent her entire life working in the field and researching their culture in the bits and pieces that their conversation allowed. And eventually, after the conversation ended, Delius and Jirara retired to bed. However, Delius was kept up for some time. All of the things that he had learned from Mikara about the universe and the worlds beyond their own, how different things were, technology and vast cities, travel between worlds, between star systems, all things that sounded so incredible, and yet, to him, all of their lives began and ended in the blink of an eye, as if the rest of the universe was flying by at a rate of speed that was, quite frankly, terrifying. Entire lives lost in the course of a day, knowing that he would never hear Mikara's voice again, that by the time he awoke, she would be dead, and someone new would replace her. The passing of a torch from generation to generation. But finally, Delius did find himself to sleep, with Jirara there to comfort him. Over the course of the next week or so, things around the village began to change, as more of these orbs began to become more prevalent around the village, people having conversations with them as they went about their day-to-day lives, the orbs being quite inquisitive about basically everything, from the materials things were made out of to their basic culture. They even had orbs that requested to go out on hunting parties to watch the hunt, take stock of the creatures that lived on that world. While Delius did talk to some of the other spheres, he never quite developed a connection the same way he did with Mikara, Certainly they seemed nice enough. However, he found the idea of getting to know someone who would be dead by the next day simply more than he could tolerate. Watching their lives blink by was just not something that he was comfortable with. Yet by the end of the week, there were more than a dozen of these spheres floating around the village, talking with everyone from the elders to even the children, who had come to understand that the orbs could not be played with like toys, as they would easily break. Some orbs even elected to follow Delius out as he assisted in hunting. Delius, unlike most of the other hunters, would usually venture out alone, and after seeing the prey that he would bring down, the orbs, which of course constantly changed names, as new people were born, lived their lives in study, and died of old age. The one that accompanied him on his hunt was thoroughly impressed with his speed, ferocity, strength, and overall ability. Apparently, the orb was capable of tracking quite effectively. However, even it failed to be able to keep up with Delius's movements during true combat, and held him in high regard as such. But as the end of the week drew near, as Delius was having a conversation with another of the warriors of the village, one of the orbs began approaching. As Delius saw it approaching, he quickly raised his hand. I'm sorry, I don't have time to talk. I'm very busy," he said, trying to ward off a conversation. "I believe this is something that you're going to want to make time for," the orb uttered. This one seemed to be a man, a very stern-sounding one. "Are you the one known as Delius? By visual acquisition, we know this to be the facts. I'm required to speak with you immediately on matters of the utmost importance." Delius breathed a sigh for a moment. "I suppose. Bayri, remember to take a few of the men and take a patrol of the village. Remember, the wards are breaking down, and larger animals are beginning to get through. So be on your guard. I don't want to see another beast about to eat a child on the outskirts of our own village without you being around to do something about it." "Yes, Delius. Right away," he said, as he made his way towards another group of warriors and began heading towards the outskirts of the village. "Okay, what do you want? What's so important?" "My name is Roman Patras, commander of the military forces of Rallis, the world that all of us come from. I need to speak with you immediately regarding the safety of your world and our own." "The safety of my world? I don't believe such a thing is a concern," Delius replied, unfazed by this man's assertion of concern and danger. "I believe that your discaution is a mistake. I'm here to inform you that the decision has been reached by one of the outer worlds in our system to kill Hagara. It is a vote that has been substantiated by the entire world, and thus they have begun construction of a super weapon, one that they believe will be capable of killing Hagara." "That's absurd. It can't be done. Even if it can't, they're going to try anyways. Nothing of this magnitude has ever been attempted before, and they've got much support, as other worlds are secretly backing them in large amounts. We have, of course, told them that The greater decision of the planets within the system is that we simply create survival safeguards for our races in lieu of the eventual awakening of Hagara. However, they will hear none of it. They have no intention of abandoning their home world, and so have begun the construction for this super weapon. I think it is very important for you to understand this, Delius. This weapon is unlike any that we have ever seen. The destructive capabilities that it possesses, or will once complete, will be more than capable of destroying any average planet with ease. We are unsure of whether it will be capable of killing Hagara. However, in terms of the rest of you, your race, your village, all of the villages that lie on the surface of Hagara, it would be catastrophic. If the weapon is completed successfully, it might just create an extinction-level event, wiping out all life on the surface. Our worst fear is that not only will the weapon fail to kill Hagara, and quite possibly destroy your entire race in the process, but that the use of this weapon might actually force Hagara to awaken earlier and be very, very upset with us. As such, a declaration of war has been declared. If the planet refuses to decommission the weapon and stop its construction, then we're going to see our first interplanetary war since the multiple civilizations were discovered hundreds of years ago. It'll be death and destruction on a massive scale, but nowhere near as massive as what we might see if Hagara awakens before anyone is ready or prepared to deal with it. Because of the danger to your people, and the fact that your village is the only one we've managed to sustain any sort of interaction with. All of the other villages simply destroy our probes without speaking to them. Even though we have gained the ability to communicate with them, they simply ignore them, destroying the probes anyways. Your village is the only one we have peaceful contact with. And so I would like to ask if you, and possibly a few other members of your village, might be willing to aid us in this conflict. We have the means to transport you off-world. It will be an exceptionally pricey endeavor, but it can be done. Would you be willing to help us for the survival of your people?